WWE superstar, Konnor of The Ascension. You worked the South Florida Indies prior to that. While you were in, I want to say developmental for WWE, you see people that you've worked with or trained with, such as a Corey Graves, Byron Saxton, or even if you see someone like an Aiden English, and they made the transition to broadcasting. Did you ever think of trying something like that?
That takes a certain special kind of person to do something like that. And that's, unfortunately, that's just, I don't never want to say never, but it's something that I've never actually thought about, but that is not easy to do. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Byron Saxton had a background of doing news or weather or something like that. So he was already used to being able to speak and, making it, I guess, I don't know what the word is. There's just something that's unique about a person that can do something like that. It's a gift. It's really a gift to be able to do something like that. And to be able to commentate and to play that part, I just don't know. I don't see myself doing that because, and I'm never gonna knock myself and say I can't do it. I just don't see myself doing it right now. Now, maybe giving back to the kids one day, as far as maybe other avenues, like that might be something I could do. But man, honestly, I still got some years left on me in that ring. So maybe in about 5 or 10 years, we can talk about this later. They're like, Jim, man, there ain't nothing I can do. That's all I got. That's all I can do now is commentate.
Well, that's interesting because age-wise, right, you do have wrestling years left, and that will lead to this because then you're saying more or less now it's going to be more of the focus anyway will be toward wrestling for another company, indie wrestling. Would it be tag team? Would it be singles? What are the plans, the short-term plans, I guess, once this coronavirus pandemic hopefully ends?
I hope so too. I'm sure there's a lot of people that are listening to this that feel the same way. Of course, safety is always the number one thing, and people with those low leg health issues, you always worry about that. So hopefully this thing pans over pretty quick, and when it does, we've had some things cooking in the oven that they should have already taken off by now. Unfortunately, because of what we're all going through right now with this pandemic, it's put a toll on us, but it's put a toll on everybody. But there are a lot of good things that are coming out of this. I think we're more focused than we've ever been, to be honest with you. It's been really nice. There's been a resurgence in us since we went up to New York. We wrestled, had some great matches, got to get a lot more one-on-one time with the fans. And I think as a performer, transitioning from someone like WWE to where you can't actually have that one-on-one time because everything's so go, go, go. Now you get to have that time with the fans, and they get to be able to connect with you a little bit more. And that's been wonderful, to be honest with you. Like, I love that. And there's a lot of avenues that are opening up with us, and it's exciting. I don't want to spoil it, and I don't want to shoot myself in the foot by being like, this is what's going to happen, and this is what's going to go on, but if everything pans out the way that it's supposed to, it's going to be neat, and it's going to be exciting.
And that's really good that there is a plan in place. Now, the plan, unfortunately, is sidetracked right now, but it's still moving forward. You're going to be wrestling, tag team wrestling, and possibly singles wrestling, too?
I think that's always a possibility with Vic and I. Vic is a really good, singles wrestler as well. We are a package no matter what. But there's always that opportunity that we've talked about where, Vic might have an opportunity to go, wrestle to, whether it be an independent company or something like that, by all means do it. That this business is always about just enjoying and loving what you do. And, the money I've always said the money comes when you love what you do. So as far as the steps going forward with these bigger companies, we are definitely going to be together. That doesn't mean that we still won't do singles matches here and there. Because matches, but as a team. So hopefully that helps kind of answer that question a little bit.
Yeah, it does. And are you able to, which is always an interesting question, especially when you have a certain name, are you able to use the Ascension, or did WWE have that trademarked or copyrighted?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. No, they own that. We've been lately going by the name formerly known as the Ascension, for the simple fact of the reason is that that was our prior name, and we haven't come up with a new name yet. We've been talking about it. We have come up with our single individual names, which now is just Big Con instead of Konnor, and then Vic, just V-I-K, and he's also known as the Space Lord, which is who he really is anyways, you know. But we haven't come up with a tag name. We've got some names that we've actually written down and that we've talked about and discussed. That's another thing, too, going forward with these other companies, like they've asked us the same thing. So that's been one of the main things that we've been focusing on right now, is just getting the tag name down, because we've got the logo, we've got everything. We just got to get the tag team name down.
And you mentioned the artist formerly known as the Ascension, right?
Yes.
Okay, so was that like sort of like branded off of Prince, the artist formerly known, and will you guys be having a symbol instead of a name at some point?
Oh man, are you trying to get me served?
No, but we'll disregard the question. I thought when you said that, though, the artist formerly known as, and the first thing that popped in my mind was Prince. And I'm like, wait a minute, the Ascension and Prince are so different whatsoever, anyway. But you know what? I'm thinking too. I was thinking as you're answering, I'm listening, and I'm thinking there was something, and there is something. There's something called, I don't know if you've ever known this, Fantasy Super Cosplay Wrestling. These super cons are huge. These Comic Cons, and Florida SuperCon in Miami, Raleigh Galaxy Con. There are a bunch out there. And a lot of the indie wrestlers and some of the bigger name wrestlers will be part of the SuperCon show, because the actual FSCW, its platform, what it's about is pro wrestlers dressed in cosplay. Xavier Woods came down. He didn't wrestle, but before he was on the main roster, but actually came down to Florida SuperCon dressed up just to be a part of the SuperCon. But they were doing actual wrestling shows, and still do, where you're dressed in cosplay, then you go out there and you're the character, you do that. That, to me, the Ascension, if everything works out behind the scenes business-wise, would be so cool to see something like that at one of those type of shows. I didn't even know if you knew about those type of shows at all.
No, I didn't. And the fact that you said that it's FSCW, that blows my mind.
Yeah, it does. Right. I know. Right. Someone should have trademarked that, right? No, but actually it means Fantasy Super Cosplay Wrestling. Rusty is not involved in it.
You know, Rusty used to be Super Mario. He might be able to pull that off.
Oh, heck yeah. Yeah, because actually, if I'm not mistaken, oh my gosh, wow. So glad you said that, because now, for a future story, it triggered something with me. The guy that actually, they actually have Mario on the FSCW show, and it's portrayed by Dash Maverick, also aka Cuba Libre, which I like the Cuba Libre thing. But anyway, not to diverse, to get off track here or whatever, but actually I think Dash is actually one of Rusty's disciples too. So when I see Dash, I'm going to ask him about that. And when I see Rusty or talk to Rusty, I'll ask him. That's so cool and all. But I mean, looking at your history, and you mentioned Duke the Dumpster Drosy is one of the people that helped you out and trained you. And then you mentioned too, Rusty Brooks, the legend in Florida, as far as wrestling and training goes. And then you got other people like a Soulman Alex G. Norman Smiley. Norman Smiley is someone that I wanted to talk about too, because Norman works behind the scenes with WWE, FCW, then NXT, and then the Performance Center and that. What does Norman Smiley mean to you?
Man, Norman, man, Norman probably probably didn't realize it, or he probably doesn't know this. I might have said something to him a long time ago. Norman, first off, was the first person that was still at that time, I think, if I'm not mistaken, was with WCW. And he gave me my first big match when it came to a big known name. And I'll never forget it because I can still see it in my head where I couldn't even sleep the night before. Norman took me under his wing. And Norman helped me out a lot. He helped me out a lot. He would make tapes for me to watch. Tapes. Go figure that, right? Tapes. He would give me tapes, the British-style wrestling in Japanese, and he would tell me to watch these. These are unique, they're different, and it's a part of the business that, that a lot of people weren't, I don't know if they weren't paying a lot of attention to it at the time. I know there was a few people that were, but for the most part, everybody was so caught up at that time with the WWF at that time. So Norman took me under his wing, and I would call Norman a lot. I would go to shows with Norman. I would, when he would allow me, I would take photos, and I would help sell his photos for him. So to go on that journey from being in the independents to, I would call him at work. I would call him at work. I would be at work. And this was before he got his job with NXT. And I think it was with the furniture business. I'm not 100% sure, and I hope he doesn't get mad at me for talking about this. But I would call Norman just to say, hey, Norm, how's your day going? You doing okay? And blah, blah, blah. And I would just talk to him about some things. And so as time would go on, it was really cool to see and to have that relationship and to watch it evolve into when he was in FCW and when I came back, he was coaching there. And to this day, he's still not only loved by everybody, but he's still with the company. And it's so cool to go through that journey with him and to know that he's still doing great. So Norman's been a big part of my life when it comes to professional wrestling. There's just some people you meet that you just never forget. He's just one of them. He's definitely one of them. Soulman is like, my father. Because I know you mentioned Soulman.
I was going to get, right, Ryan, I was going to get into Soulman Alex G because...
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, not at all. I'm glad you brought that up because I did mention him and then we're talking about Norman. But I want to say this about Soulman because Rusty is known for all he's done, and rightfully so. But I'll tell you what, Soulman is almost like behind the scenes in a sense where unless you've worked with him or watched him wrestle, and he still wrestles today, by the way, and he's still training others as well, he's also been a big influence on a lot of wrestlers' lives.
Yeah, he's right up there with Norm and Rusty. You're talking about three guys that were just such a big part of South Florida during that time of training and inspiring people. And still, I mean, you could get anybody's, you could ask them what they think about Norm. You could ask from the top tier talent, maybe like a guy like Roman, to whoever's current, that might be considered that's brand new on the first week of NXT. They'll tell you how great Norman is. Alex is the same way. Rusty, when I first started training at Rusty's backyard, Rusty, and I'm just jumping all over the place right now, but this is all coming back around to Soulman. Rusty, I'll never forget this. The first time I saw Soulman Alex G, Rusty pointed him out to me. He says, do you see that guy there, right there in that ring? And I go, yes, sir. And he goes, that's Soulman Alex G. He's the smoothest man in the business. If you ever want to get in the ring with somebody and learn this business, that's the guy you do it with. And I'll never forget that. And I got in there, and the rest was just history. Even to this day, I still talk to Soulman. I text him almost all the time because he knows my son. He knows my wife. He knows everything about my life. So Soulman to me is like my father, legit. And those are strong words for me. But yeah, he's like my dad. If I have any questions, I'll talk to him. If I'm just sitting around and I'm not sure, if I just want to I don't know, annoy someone, I text them. That's just who he is to me.
It's interesting through your journey and speaking so highly of others and the respect you have, which is important to always have that respect from where you came from and who trained you and who helped you. But one of the things you mentioned was the backyard. I thought that was just it's so apropos because WWE Performance Center is amazing. It is so great. The trainers there, Norman's training there, training wrestlers there, and superstars, and it's such a great facility. But it really is about those trainers. It really is about those trainers. You were training in a backyard with Soulman, Alex G, Rusty Brooks, the people that were there. And it really comes back to so much about that training. Yeah, you could be in a great facility, and that's awesome. Or you could be in a backyard, and you could still make it. Because it's about the trainers. And it still is. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it's about being trained by the people that I've always felt that have done something in this business. Rusty's a legend. And if there's anybody that's made it with, the WWE, it's that guy. And he can tell you anything about the business if you just ask him and you listen. And he'll give you all the tools, and Soulman was big in Puerto Rico and global, that was down there. And then Norman, has been all over the world. So, these were all these resources that I had that I just took advantage of. And I asked a lot of questions, and if they told me to stay later, if they told me to do something, I would do it. That's just, and you would learn. And that was the beauty of it, is that you're not only were you learning, but you were learning from guys that knows what it takes to be in the business.
And on that journey, you also got to work in Deep South Wrestling in Georgia. Jody Hamilton, the Masked Assassin. That's legendary right there. FCW, Tampa, Steve Kern was very involved there when it was in Tampa, and that's amazing. You had Bill DeMott, whatever, but, training and doing his thing. Names that have, people that have accomplished quite a bit in the pro wrestling business. Geez, when you pull it all together and you look back at that, your own tree, and see all those names that were involved, and others too, obviously. You would know better than me, obviously, with that. But just to see all those names, it's almost like, well, gee, how did I get here? Well, that's probably how you got there. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think that you put in, what you put in is what you're going to get out of this business. So if you want to just be, a fly-by-night or whatever, that's what you should expect. But if you put in the tape time and, you really study and you listen and you learn and you apply, the world's the limits in this business. And especially now. Like now there's so much happening. Like when I was breaking in, you didn't have any options. You had, if I'm not mistaken, it was TNA at that time, and it was WWE. That was it. That was all you had. Now there's so much that's out there, and there's so much opportunity that it's just crazy. To me, that's just more of a drive. And I hope that's what these kids see, is, what you put in is what you're going to get out. And with those guys, my God, that was literally so much experience just to sit back and listen and have school sessions with everybody that's been a part of my life, and you just apply it. And some things work and some things don't for you. And that's okay. That's just how the business works. But you talk about, being around the right people and leading into some things. Like it was great. It was awesome, to be honest with you. Like I was very lucky. It all goes back to me saying I was lucky and fortunate. I really was.
Lucky, fortunate, and you did the hard work and put the time in that you needed to do as well. And you mentioned opportunities, and especially with social media, good and bad, there's always with everything. But the good of it is, wow, a lot of talent is getting more opportunity, and some of it is because of social media and just being able to put themselves out there and matches out there. And then you look at other organizations, whether it be in All Elite Wrestling or Ring of Honor or Major League Wrestling or Impact Wrestling, NWA Power. There is opportunity out there. Are you open to any of those doors that are available, if they're available?
All of them. All of them. Yeah, all of them. Right now, it's like what I've been doing right now, what I've been kind of, telling people. Right now, I just kind of wanted to sit back a little bit. I've had some of those companies present themselves, and some of them I'm very interested in. Some of them haven't reached out, and that's okay. But I think the main thing for me right now is I've spent so much time in a mainstream, if not the mainstream company, that I just kind of want to just do me and not answer to anybody right now, if that makes any sense. Some people that might not sound right, but for me, it was a lot of yes sirs, no sirs. Was that okay, sir? Anything you want, sir? Now I just want to sit back and just kind of take these moments that we're talking about and remember them, because honestly, I haven't thought about some of this stuff, Jim, until you brought it up.
The sense that you want to sort of refuel. You want to sit back, recharge. How about that? Use that word, recharge. So it's like sit back, do that. And, we're going through this whole coronavirus pandemic, so it's a time to do that anyway. And just it's good game planning for you, because you were released at a time back in December where, I don't want to say positive, but the only thing maybe good about any of the releases that just happened in WWE is because of the coronavirus pandemic, independent contractors are allowed to apply and obtain unemployment benefits. So there is that, because as an independent contractor of anything, not just wrestling, but of anything, you can't do that. But at least they open that door so those that were released can at least get some money that way if needed. But I'm wrapping all around this. We're going through all this, and you're going through this, and you're doing your thing, and now you're planning ahead. And it's a really interesting time. We just had a WrestleMania with no crowd. I think they all did amazing out there. But what do you think? What were your thoughts about WrestleMania, going out with the show, and then just being able to deliver like that in front of no crowd?
Yeah. First off, the first thing you think of when you think of WrestleMania, you think of thousands and thousands of people. So it's always going to be weird. I know it was weird at first, because you're like, man, this is going to be tough, because we're so acclimated to WrestleMania being a certain way. So for the performers to still go out there with none of that, I'm going to try to think of the right word to use for this, energy that the crowd gives these fans, that the crowd gives the performers. Because a lot of this, remember too, like some of these spots that we've seen, it takes a lot of adrenaline, for some of these things to happen when you're jumping off, high places. I'm just thinking of Kevin Owens right now as I'm talking. So to see a performer go out there without any of that environment tells you a lot about them. It tells you about their love, their passion, and their heart for the business. I think at first I was a little standoffish with this, because I was like, man, I just don't understand. Just like as we're all talking right now, like with everything that's going on right now, we just don't understand. But then when you watch it, you think, man, I am so proud, not only of WWE still going through with it, but I'm so proud of watching the performers give it everything they had. Because that says a lot. That's a testament to all of them. They put their bodies on the line. They could have probably gone out there, and I don't want to say that they just didn't care, but they could have maybe toned it down a little bit because they didn't have that crowd reaction. But man, instead they turned it up. They amped it up even more, and that's great. And I love that. And to me, when I see something like that, I think, man, that says a lot. And they did some unique things too, that because you always wonder, how is this business going to get better? You watch, the Bray Wyatt thing. That was very unique. That was very, very strange, but I love that kind of stuff. That might not have connected with everybody, but I know it connected with a lot of people. So it was different. Undertaker. You know, that whole, it was like a movie, you know. So it's funny because now you think about the evolution of what's next for wrestling. And this might be an avenue that, you know, honestly, we might have stumbled on by accident, which is, I think, pretty cool. So I think all in all, I was really happy for everybody. I think they did a great job. Now, the other side of me, I live in Tampa. So I had a lot of shows that day to where I was going to make good revenue. But unfortunately, things happened the way that they did, and a lot of, you know, it affected everybody, and a lot of shows got pulled, a lot of business got pulled. So on the selfish aspect of it, man, I really wish it would have ran here. But the fact that it was done at the PC and the way the guys performed, you couldn't have asked for anything better. Like, they did a great job.
We're going to wrap this up, and that was just a really good insight, good observation of talent, the big event, WrestleMania, and everything going on. And WWE alum, now he's a WWE alum, Konnor Ryan from The Ascension. And it's interesting because you're from South Florida, one of the short lists to make it from South Florida to the big time. And a credit to you, credit to your trainers. You show that respect factor, which I think is important, that needs to be installed and learned through all generations, not just for pro wrestling. And it's great to see. I'm wondering if you met any of your favorites, your pro wrestling favorites, through your journey. Any names come to mind that you got to meet and or wrestle?
Oh, yeah. You know, man, you get to... I mean, I sat in the same room one time with Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, Hulk Hogan, Shawn Michaels. We went over some stuff. You know, I got to be in the ring with JBL, Ron Simmons. I mean, they're just... God, I was so lucky when you look at it and you get to see, like, all these names that you got to be in the ring. I got to be in the ring with Roman, Daniel Bryan, Del Rio. Like, I mean, these are guys that, you know, that have stamped this business. They put a good, solid, strong stamp on it. And so you go back and you look and you just say, man, I was so privileged to be a part of that. And there's I always say that in this business, you know, and it's a big saying, is that you never say never. Anything's possible. You could always go back. And you might not. You know, you might go down other avenues. But, man, it was just awesome to sit next to Sergeant Slaughter, having a talk with him. Really quick, little thing that you didn't know about me was I got into wrestling because of Sergeant Slaughter. I was landscaping in his backyard one day. And I was playing football, and I was thinking about, this is going to be kind of weird, but I was thinking about trying to figure out how to get into the XFL. And a buddy of mine, Don Hernandez, I'll never forget it, he invited me over, saying, you help me with landscaping? I said, okay. Started laying rock out and stuff like that. And he goes, you never believe whose house this is? And I go, who's that? He goes, this is Sergeant Slaughter's house. And I go, get out of here. Sure enough, 15 minutes later, Sarge pulls up, walks right in, and my mouth dropped because I was a huge G.I. Joe fan. I freaked out, walked up, introduced myself, and he asked me if I ever thought about getting into professional wrestling. And I said, I loved it growing up, never really thought about it. He goes, you should think about it. Get into one of these independent promotions. There's a show coming up. Just look around and see what's going on. And that's basically, in a nutshell, that's how I found Rusty Brooks. So there's a big, that's crazy, but that's kind of how it all started.
Yeah, that's such a interesting, I never knew that. That is such an interesting story, too, for you, for anyone, but just how they got started. Slaughter was big into golf. I don't know how well he played it, but he was big into golf, so he loved South Florida, and he loved the west coast of Florida, the Naples, Sebring, Fort Myers area. So he did his share of golfing and charity golf tournaments, too, which is really cool. All right, so we'll wrap this up. South Florida, you're a South Florida guy. Let me address the elephant in the room because I don't want to get everybody commenting and all this. How come you didn't ask him this? How come you didn't ask that? So I'll just go right to the question, and you can give a no comment if you want. Is Krissy Vane making a comeback?
Man, hell yes, she is. I'm proud to say that, and I've been helping her with it. So is Jay. And David Mercury, you know, at Tampa Bay Pro Wrestling, she's getting back into it, and it's exciting. I'm excited for her, and she's excited, and it's going to be good.
That's awesome. And also, will we see the reunion of that team, the Irish Thug Connection?
Well, it all goes back to you never say never in this business, right? Anything is possible. If anything, I would love to sit back and kick back with J-Dog and just shoot the breeze and see how he's doing, worst case scenario.
Yeah, you know, he's running shows now. He's the one running, he's running West Palm Beach Platinum Pro Wrestling. Nice job, nice venue, sets it up well, really does a nice job with it too. It's really cool to see him doing that and doing well, doing good things, turning himself around, which is great too. So
very happy for you.
Yeah. And then Lester's Diner or Zuccarelli's Pizza?
Oh, Lester's Diner.
Right down the road from CCHS. It's still there, by the way.
Lester's Diner. Come on. That's awesome.
Oh, man. All right. Well, listen. First of all, thank you so much for taking this time, because it was a lot of time and I had a lot of questions, and I so appreciate that so much. I'm glad for what you've been able to do. I'm glad how you were able to do it, and I'm looking forward to see what you got planned in the future that you're able to do. So just thank you so much, and I want to wish you all the best, your family all the best. God bless you and them, and get through all this coronavirus pandemic as well.
Thank you, Jim. It was an absolute pleasure and honor to be on your show, and it's always great catching up with you. You know that.